Nick Holmes, welcome to the Live and Learn podcast. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
We've got a real L&D heavyweight with us today, so really appreciate your time coming on this.
Oh gosh, yeah. Sounds like more of a bantamweight, but no, I'm glad, happy to be here. So good to be here, Simon.
So to kind of quantify that, do you want to just maybe just introduce yourself and all the various things you do and your background L&D for the people watching in?
Yeah, absolutely.
Put you on the spot there.
No, it's great. I describe myself. I haven't really said this out loud, so it'd be interesting to see how this lands back. As a bit of a workplace architect, but I do formally do a few things. So I am the VP of Employee Experience at an organisation called Avalier Health, who are trying to make the world a healthier place. So we partner with the healthcare industry to solve complex healthcare problems like marketing or communications consultancy. And I do that for 1,600 human beings across the world. And my accountability there is to change the way and improve the way they think and feel at work. I also have another hat, and that other hat is with an organisation called Unthink.
Yep.
And I'm an experienced architect for them. And with Unthink, we partner with organisations who just want to mess up the L&D world, who want to do things differently.
Sounds
we
good.
don't do workshops, we do experiences. We make people jump out of their skin. We can make them remember things that they should remember, and ultimately we bring the weekend into the workday. So combining those two things is really powerful for me, because personally my purpose is to really change the way we think and feel at work. A third of our life is spent doing this thing called work. It can't suck.
Absolutely.
And we have to make it not suck for ourselves, for our older generations, and also for people coming through. It's just a non-negotiable for me.
Yeah. And where did that kind of passion come from? So I guess how do you start an L&D or learn development, and then into people? What was that journey, and where's that purpose come from? Because it's a really great purpose, and I think everyone would agree with that.
Yeah, it's just really interesting. I have no traditional entry route into what I do. Probably shouldn't be here, to be honest with you. I managed to blag my way through the last sort of 10, 11 years or so. No, so look, I wanted to be a performer. Originally, I went to university to study performing arts. I went to Los Angeles to train to be an actor. I did all that, came back to London. I got an agent, did all that stuff. One of the things I was doing, many things, and I'll talk about this a little bit later as we go through, I'm sure, but one of the many things I do on top of being, when I was a kids entertainer, worked at Hamleys and advertised, all this kind of stuff. But one of the things I did was work in retail and selling photo books at London Aquarium. That annoying people that,
You're one of those people.
I was one of those. Take your photo, stand here. Turns out I was really good at selling stuff. Anyway, my career sort of snowballed, and I led retail stores. I trained. My first ever training session was the backdrop was London Aquarium. Right, so you've got the sharks behind you, and I was 21,
literal
running a
sharks
training
well.
session.
Yes.
I just blagged my way. I'd never had 40 people, and I remember playing clips of like Muhammad Ali, funny going back to the heavyweight thing, and just going, look what he does. And anyway, so for some reason, what I said must have worked, and then I was like, this is cool. How do you change people's behaviours through what you're doing and saying? That was interesting to me. And then I have a very, very addictive personality. So how do I get better at what I do? And I love sports and high performance, and I studied that and researched that. And anyway, my career snowballed. I was the global head of L&D there in a few years' time from that point. And then I wanted to take on the whole people spectrum. So I went to be the head of HR at a B2B tech company in Manchester. Yep. I moved up north. Met my beautiful wife during that journey. And then in 2019, sort of the world changed for me, and my daughter was born. So her name is Aurora. And then I remember seeing her, I remember going, gosh, I'm not ready for this. And I remember thinking, and I'd just gone on paternity leave, and I was thinking, that's 2 weeks. It's like, that sucks. And I was thinking,
it's not.
And it sucks. And the whole way we put, it's a very different podcast about care responsibilities. But I now have like a master's in employment law, because I want to change the way the world works, and you do that through policy as well as learning. So that was interesting. But I remember looking at her going like, okay, and I'd come back and I was like, okay, well, this isn't right. And then we'd gone through COVID, and I was the head of HR leading the organisation through COVID.
Been challenging.
Things happened through that. And I remember thinking, yes, the world's gone through this thing, but we could have done this very, very differently and made it not suck for people. And I was thinking, what happens when she, in 14, 18, 20 years, whatever, goes into the workforce and one of the 750,000 businesses that operate in the UK, right, chances are, what if it sucks for her and she comes back home? Because what you experience at work, you bring back with you at 100%. Home. And all of us have experienced when we were younger, our parents who had good or bad days at work, and their interactions with you.
Yeah,
and you think and your relationship with your loved one, your partner, your friends changes through that thing, which is insane, right? When you break it down. And if you look at our demographics, people are working longer and harder. The average life expectancy will move to 103 in the next 20 years, and that means we'll work to at least 70. And if you think about that, then
crazy.
Then we can't make it shit.
Yeah.
So it's got to be different. So that's basically where it came from, where I came. And then I pivoted and went into Avalere to be the head of professional development, and that sounded really boring. So I changed that to career experience. When we met and wanted to bring you guys in. And then from there, it was like, well, now I look after everything from the physical space to how people think about the business when they come in, all the way through to when they become an alumni, and then through my relationships met on Think, and here we are, trying to cause trouble in the world of learning and people.
Fantastic. That's a really good summary, thank you. I think I love all that background. It's really nice adding the personal touch to it all, isn't it? This episode is all on human-centric leadership,
yes,
which I think that's really important, is it, to lots of people. How do you think the context has changed, and why it's become such a... There's a bit more awareness, I think, isn't there, about... Obviously, leadership's been around a long time, obviously, but... Yeah. Good and bad leadership feels a lot more pivotal than it ever has been, and the context is a bit different, isn't it? I think maybe the pandemic's factored in with that. But then what's your thoughts on why it's become, rightly, a bit further up the agenda, maybe?
I think knowing it or not knowing it, the way that your leader interacts with you and your organisation completely dictates your feeling towards that business. So I was talking earlier, but some new data is coming to light that basically suggests if you've got a terrible manager but a great leader, you're 68% more likely to stay in your organisation.
I find that interesting, because obviously the phrase is always you leave your manager, not...
which is actually a bit of a myth.
Yes.
So, and obviously you can have the debate between manager and leadership, but the difference is the manager sort of dictates the flow of work for you, but the leadership sets your pace, vision and purpose for what your role is and the organisation. Why is it important now? I mean, it's always been important, but the thing, if you look at, especially in our space, of how have leaders been educated over time? And so you look at the CEOs in our organisations, most organisations now, they're kind of brought up with the traditional school of business, which has been sort of a directive style, right? Pace setting, urgency, and sort of get on with it, let's go. And that's sort of a generational model where we look at that. Now, yes, the pandemic has shifted, but the generational makeup of the workforce has changed. And how we think and feel beyond work has completely changed. The things we interact with has changed. We talk about a human-centered leadership approach. Some people go, well, that's just like big feels.
Yes.
Right? It's just like you going, well, that's just going, are you all right? And like, yes, are you all right is a good question and part of it, but it's not what people want. Being a human-centered leader just means you're focusing on that very thing, the human being in your charge, the human beings in your charge. And if you can really understand the human beings that you are working with and you are there to serve, and that's a big part of, right, is who you're serving, then you can get the most out of them as a human being. And being a human-centered leader doesn't just mean going, do you need anything? I'm going to pay you whatever you want. Like it's actually about understanding the intrinsic motivation of that person and then getting the best out of them through empathy, emotional intelligence, good communication and conversation. But also sometimes people need this is right, this is wrong, right? So there's different ways.
And what would your advice be to people, like you said, have been leaders through a very certain, maybe generational thing, or there's a certain school of thought, and the feels that maybe there's a lot more variables now, and not sure where to start, whether it's different generations, you've got hybrid working, and they're kind of not sure how to get it right. And obviously everyone's very different, which is the human condition, which is great. What would your advice be where to start if people feel a bit stuck, where they maybe have always just they've had a style and that's that, and that doesn't cut it anymore? And
to say like it doesn't cut it anymore, it's not quite there. It's just about any if you're looking at your role and you are a leader in the organization, or you're in a people team and you've got to change the behaviors of your leader, it can be this big chunky big beast that we're talking about, right? But ultimately there's a ways that you can really hone this in. I think focus on a couple of things. The first is the voice of your people. What do your people need? What are they crying out for? And be purposeful with that. So go and ask them and get that information and data. What is the purpose of the business? Where are you trying to take the business? Where is it going? And what does your business need to grow and thrive in the future of where you're working and living, right? So understanding that, and then right in the middle will be sort of your next step. And when you break down some of the key competencies, what human-centric leader is, it's not about changing your personality. It's about evolving, and it's about being what we call adaptable, right? So it's having adaptability to be able to listen intently, and those skills of being able to say, right, I can adjust in my approach to the needs of what you need as a person. And to be honest with you, to start with, being a human-centered leader, a human-centric leader, is about just being a good human being, right? How do you treat the people you love? Right, and I'm not saying that you bring parenting into the workplace, but what you do need to bring in is a mindset of going, the way I live my life is being kind to humans, right? So if I'm kind to my team, that might help. If I'm honest with them and candid with them, they need that. I keep them in the know. We're so afraid of having those tough conversations that we end up just skirting around the point, and that's not kind. That isn't good human-centered leadership. That's actually giving people ambiguity and mistrust, right? So difficult, but what I would say is break down what your business needs. I would then highlight what are the key competencies you want to draw out, and then design experiences to bring those competencies to life, right? Whether it's we need to get people listening more, right? So you put them in a fishbowl, right? So you just get 4 people in your team just to talk about how they're feeling. You just watch and listen to those interactions take place. Whether it's building up, being able to have good conversations and build people through radical candor. Bring that into your business and just get people better at listening and having conversations. Once you know what people need and want genuinely, then that will spill out into your behaviors. But it's about discipline. Can you keep doing that day after day? Yeah.
And that's the thing, we were chatting earlier about it becoming habit as well, isn't it? So it's not suddenly thinking, oh, I need to be nice today because I've forgotten to be a nice person. So on a Friday, I'm going to be a bit more fun or something. It's got to be a consistent habit, hasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. You don't, we every Jan we set resolutions, we start books, we never finish. We go to the gym once, we think that's it, we're done. It's not how it works. And then the problem with the way we're working and the way we're living at the moment is the two are not joined up, right? So if you take work away for a second and think about our lives of particularly the last sort of 5 years, we are getting and we're craving these dopamine hits through social media, through the news feeds, everything that we're accessing. We post something in the world, we get a like, that releases a dopamine hit, which is a drug, and it's addictive. Yeah, so we're getting that instant gratification. Now you take that into the workplace, and when we talk about leadership behavior, coming in and being a human-centered and driving high performance is not easy, and it's not something you can do once to say like I've listened, but I listened to you like 6 months ago. I'm a human-centered leader. No, it's how you show up every single day. Simon Sinek has a beautiful video on this, right, where it's like there's no one day that your partner fell in love with you. It's through the build-up of habits and micro actions that get you to that point. If you want to start your business by being a human-centered leader, just start. Like you change culture through drum beats, not lightning bolts. And the way that you change a behavior in a leader is the same thing. Your experience shape the things that you think and do, which shapes your attitudes. Your language changes, and if you change language, you can then start to change culture, right?
Yeah,
so yeah, that's all about habit building. You got to have the discipline to do it.
Yes, and factoring the time in as well, and prioritizing it as well. I think sometimes people maybe don't make it top of their agenda. Maybe they're busy, there's other things going on or whatever. Yeah,
exactly. And as a people person, if you're sitting there going, right, I'm in charge of L&D, talent and leadership in my organization, starts with you. Like you've got to model this behavior, right? It starts with you, your people, your teams, and then you can start to build this out a little bit wider into your organization, understand it, make time for it. Yeah, like you say.
Yes, and I think this is a really good link to the framework we discussed as well last week before we kind of were preparing for this episode. You've got this excellent framework, which we can probably share if anyone wants to see it as well. The kind of the grid, the 4 elements.
Yeah.
Do you want to roughly talk us through that? And that's I find it really fascinating myself as someone who leads a team. I've really enjoyed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some of the ideas on there.
I think there's a lot coming out about the future of work, and there will always have a future of work, right? We had a future of work in 1700s when the first ever HR department was formed.
Yes.
But if we talk about what that needs to look like for our people to make work not suck, right? So you've got to what I call kicking future of work into hyperdrive. And when you take that word hyper, that basically means how do we elevate these key areas, right? And when we talk about hyperdrive and we talk about the 4 areas of the future of work, we're talking about hyper health, hyper connected, hyper personalized, and hyper human. Mm-hmm. And it's the hyperhuman piece that we need to level up. With the rise of Gen AI technology, it is advancing at beautiful rates. Yes, of course it is, and it's going to increase organizational performance. I saw just yesterday that it takes Gen AI, even Chat GPT, takes average performers into the high-performing category just through Chat GPT, right?
Interesting,
yeah. Which means your high performers become caught up very quickly just through a couple of clicks on a keyboard. And I also saw something that people are actually, even though they need it and they understand it, it doesn't drive employee engagement. So people are understanding that technology and AI is here, but it's not making me feel better about the work that I'm doing. It just gets me to the end of that task quicker.
Yes.
There's still another task and another task. Yeah. So when we talk about hyperhuman, we're talking about how do you make the workplace feel good again, right? How do we add moments that I mentioned at the beginning? The world of L&D and the world of learning and the world of work is mostly forgettable. Right, you move from meeting to meeting, busyness to busyness. It's occasionally remarkable, and the occasionally remarkable piece always lands because you interact with someone else.
Yes.
So when we talk about hyperhuman, we're talking about how do we make more time to be more human, to smile more, to inject more joy into what we're doing through every stage of the employee lifecycle, whether that is an onboarding surprise and delight and a message from your leader, personalized that says, "Hi, Simon, like I can't wait to have you in our
It
business.
means a lot to people. Things
So
that
basic,
it
right?
means a lot to people.
Or actually, I'll just take the time to pick the phone up and call you out the blue and say, this isn't a meeting. I just want to see how you do it. I want to talk to you a
And there's
little
no
bit.
agenda. There's no,
Right? And then you do that by freeing back time in your working life by removing me. I posted something yesterday on LinkedIn. We spend 4 years of our life in meetings. 4 years of our life is spent on average on meetings. 4 years of our lives. And they're so rubbish. They are so forgettable. They're so forgettable. We tend to just pop on a bloody PowerPoint and talk to it. What's the point? So that's what we talk about, hyperhuman. And then one of the other quadrants there is like hyperconnected, right? I don't know, like, and this has been slammed by the pandemic as people have gone remote. But ultimately, how do you make space and time to bring people together? It can be virtually, but in person, about something more than just a task on our in tray. And I mean, like, a really good example is I used to be part of a five-a-side team at work after work before the pandemic.
For my sins too as well. Yeah.
Loved it. But there's a Wednesday night where it's just like I had that time and you forget about everything else, you just play, and that's not there anymore. We don't so one of the things I'm doing at Avila Health, I'm making sure we ramp up our social calendar. It doesn't have to be massively expensive, but every single month there is at least 4 or 5 things that people can just do to build community again. And the irony behind this is in the pandemic, that's all we had. You remember we got on deck chairs and we had drinks with our neighbours.
Yes.
And we had different relationships and we got closer with family. And now you see everything regressing.
Coming back.
Forcing you back to the office. I'm forcing you to do this. I'm worried about this. And that's just because of an economic downturn. I tell you now, if the economy wasn't in a squeeze or a tight recession, people wouldn't be forcing people back. It's the panic button that we press in our minds.
It's interesting. Yeah.
Where we go, shit, I don't know what to do. I need to see what people are
go back to
doing.
default.
Yeah, let's do that. Whereas actually we've got an opportunity to break the chain of what work can be and we haven't really capitalized on it. So yeah, hyper connected is how we do better at bringing those communities back together. Hyper personalization speaks for itself. It's AI. It's making sure we're leveraging tools to make our life better, not more burdenous. That's not a word.
It can be a word for today.
It's a burdenous, everyone. Burdenous word.
We can add that
not leveraging the burden of more work, but actually freeing up our time to do deep work, which is meaningful and things like this. A little bit more. And hyper health is going to be so critical for our physical mental health. We don't have roles baked in organizations beyond occupational health, by the way, has been with businesses for so long, right? I feel like you have an occupational health specialist, you get referred to, blah, blah, blah. But there's no one baked in in your organization as a psychologist who's able to then sit you down and say, let's talk things through. Let me help you become the healthiest version of yourself. And when we talk about hyper healthy, that's hyper person, people, and planet, right? So it's 3 Ps under that. But yeah, look, it's a framework which I think will work if we really live up to it and we think about how do we make people feel better by being hyperhuman? How do we make them live longer by being hyper healthy? How do we leverage technology to make it more personalized, more meaningful so I can do deep work? And how do we just get better at building connections and communities? I think if we do those things and just those things, we'll make work not suck, basically.
I think that's a great takeaway for anyone listening. Bringing it back to you as well, I'm really interested in your background. In terms of human-centric leadership, have you got, you don't have to name names, obviously, you can give them code names if you like. Just that kind of 10, 11 year period you kind of talked us through.
Yeah.
A really good manager, mentor, leader where they planted some of the seed and passion you've got for that area. Or the flip side, maybe the not good way and you kind of thought, I wouldn't do like that.
Yeah.
If you had those examples, good and bad, that has shaped where you are today and that passion is.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll never, from a passionate perspective, my passion for changing how people think and feel started when I had an amazing GM of people and culture called Marty King, who's in New Zealand Kiwi and is one of the biggest voices on LinkedIn and in New Zealand for equality and D&I. And my passion came from him. He used to be called the Duracell Bunny, but what I learned from him was just the way that energy and pace can drive change in organizations. But the very first thing you need to do is just be a good person. And it's so easy to not be in business. Yeah. It's so easy to be dragged in and fall under the avalanche and snow of pressure that are put on either by yourself or by your shareholder. But that really stuck with me, and it was just a real simple piece of advice. And actually, quite funny enough, my brother will probably love this because I'm giving him a shout out. When I was 8, The piece of advice he just ever gave me was just don't be a bastard. Right. Just always that. It's just like,
Good advice.
It's just good advice. It's just don't be a dick. Sorry, you can cut that out if you want to or keep it. But ultimately, and it's just like, and the world is serious enough around work. If you look at what's happening, if everyone, I remember someone's one of the leaders saying to me once, I was just on the good side. There's some bad ones as well. I'll give you some of them. It was just if everyone changed the first thought that came into their head when someone asked them something to how can I help you? If that was the first thing I thought, was like, so how can I help you is the first thing. That's my first thought. And then we'll work it out. Instead it's not. It's either how can you help me?
Yeah. Or
it's no, I'm too busy to do that, or no, that doesn't fit in my agenda. And it's like the world doesn't get better that way. So that's kind of some of those. But on the flip side, I remember.
You have to name names.
No, I won't. I just remember very clearly, and it was. We were, as a sort of a leadership team, going through a very tough time, previous organisation, and newly acquired business, previously part of a bigger one, and a brand new sort of leader in that business. And as we were sort of muddling through all this stuff, that leader was like, right, I'm off skiing. We're just going skiing for a week and I'll call you on the... And I remember, so like, okay, right, fair enough. Everyone's entitled to leave and time off and things like that. But then we had a call and the guy dialed in from like the slopes. And it was like we're talking about people and people's lives. This guy was dialing in from the slopes.
It's not really in touch, is it?
Yeah, so and it was, it was sort of early Teams times. So like you could, in Teams you could mute people. So I just remember going like, okay. And then I just muted him whilst he was mid-talking. And I was like, sorry, we can't hear you. We can't hear you. No, I'm muted. I can hear you now. And then I'd suddenly mute and everyone else is like creasing. But it's like, how can you be tone deaf when we're like in the mines, like in the cold bits, trying to figure out this really difficult thing, and you're there on the bloody slopes? Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah, just like chaletting down. It's all right, it's fine. Yeah, so there's definitely that. And it's funny when you think leadership is this thing which is go down, but it's up as well. I remember my own lessons. I remember when I was running retail stores, that I was away for a day on annual leave, and some of the senior leaders came in and made a couple of tweaks, and I was like, I was so like raged by this, that because I had such like a passion for this thing, this site, and it was mine, and I sent off this most horrific email. And I'm very dyslexic as well, right? Which is like it's a superpower for me, because it means I see things in different colours, and it's wonderful. But and life very differently, but. It means sometimes back then especially, I was not proofing anything, I was just firing out. I sent out this horrific email to like the CEO, leaders, just going, what is this? Like I didn't even like take a beat to get context, and I was like, that was pretty unhuman centered of me. I probably should have just found out what was happening and then called people. It was just this real fiery email, and ever since that moment I remember going like, I probably won't do that again. Yeah. But no, very, very different elements of it. And just a final one on sort of like happened to colleagues, and it's the subtle lack of human-centeredness in this, is where you've got a leader who thinks they're doing the right thing, right? So someone's got a personal thing going on, and they say, I'm really sorry, like this is happening. Can I get time off, like morning, day, afternoon, whatever? And the leader's like, yes, of course. Like, please take all the time you need. And then an hour later, sends them a Teams message, like,
yes,
yeah, just wondering if you've got this. And it's like, an hour ago, I've told you I've got this thing, right? And you're like going, you see that and you're going, that's fake human-centered leadership, right? That's not real. It's a masquerade or a facade. So yeah, there's lots of different, that shows up in many ways, I guess.
I mean, everyone can relate to that one, I think. I think everyone's had that at least once, or when you're busy getting the messages anyway.
Yeah, sorry, sorry, I know it's late. Yeah, so you know it's late. You've just committed, so why on earth do you keep typing? Outlook has this amazing thing where it says send later. Like, you send later. Like, yeah, anyway. Yeah.
And we always kind of wrap up every episode with the title of the podcast, Live and Learn. I guess you've got some really good examples already you've shared, but have you got one anecdote in particular where, a bit like your email story maybe, where you mentioned there, you look back and again it's driven your passion or whatever for human-centered leadership, it's kind of shaped you?
Gosh. I think the thing that's probably shaped me the most. So one of the things that one of the roles I was global head of L&D at a tourism firm. So doing tourism. It was in Dubai. We were launching the Dubai Aquarium. And in Dubai, the workforce is predominantly from Philippines, India, Pakistan, and people come over, they work in Dubai, they live in pretty horrific conditions, actually, and work to send money home. And one of the things we were doing is teaching people how to sort of sell photos, right? And I didn't speak Tagalog, which is language in the Philippines. And I remember one wonderful woman called Sherry, who was just not getting it. And I was trying to say, like, look, this is £25, and I was thinking, it's not landing for her. And everyone else is like, and they're so funny, right? There's just anyway. But she wasn't getting it. She was getting quite upset. And I said, just do it in your native tongue. Ignore English. Screw English. Do it in your native tongue and do it exactly how you want to do it, the way you want to do it. And all of a sudden, she just goes and lights up and starts delivering the sales pitch, and everyone just goes, yeah, it goes, like erupts and things like that. And it was just one of those moments. And been lucky to do lots of things, meet loads of humans, and go to many, many places. It will always stick with me, the fact that what people need is just the ability to stop, slow down, and just get in their shoes for a sec. And human sense of leadership is all about that. It's about, how do I put your shoes on for a moment so I understand who you are? And then how, once I understand who you are, do I ally you? And I become your support network. I am the one that amplifies your voice. So whether you're Sherry trying to sell a photo book or anyone in your team, it's about putting your feet in their shoes.
That's an excellent way to end, I think, this episode. Really appreciate you coming on,
Pleasure.
sharing all your expertise and insights. I learned a lot, listened to you as well. I'm sure everybody else did as well. So
if not, it's not my fault. No, I'm just kidding.
But thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you
and we'll
so
definitely get you back on soon. And thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, mate.